All right, let's dive right back in so we can get through a lot of the topics. Number 4 on our top 10 list is high yield, high management soybeans. I want you guys to grab your phones out, and I have a question for you. Before I show you my yields, I want you to show me yours, okay? What's the highest yield of soybeans you've ever raised? And I'll let you decide how many acres it's on. I'll let you guys decide that. Just don't do that thing where you're in the combine and you take the hydro and you pull it back real quick and nose the combine down to spike the yield monitor. That's not what I'm looking for here. How high yields are you guys running over here in Ohio? We asked this question in North Dakota one time and everybody was dumbfounded. And I was getting 0 votes in. And I said, what's wrong? And they said, where's the category for 40 to 50 bushel corn? I said, I probably ought to change that. We got some of you 12% growing 100 bushel soybeans. Good job, congratulations, that's awesome. 38%, the highest percentage, 80 to 89, that's pretty good. What's the county average here in this county in Ohio for soybeans? Anybody know county average? 50, 60? Somewhere in there? How many of y'all think that soybean yields are stuck? I don't know if, there we go. Are you a grower that says, oh no, my soybean yields are awesome? Are you a grower that says, yes, I'm tired of growing 50 bushel beans? Are you like me and says, heck with soybeans, let's grow corn, right? Or I'll give you the undecided, I'll give you the bailout, you don't know. Who? This is another slide. No matter where we go in the country, the majority of farmers say they feel stuck and tired of growing 50 bushel beans. You guys are exactly the same as other farmers we've talked to. Here is my historical data for soybean yield at the PTI Farm, and I'm not happy about it. We started in 18, we grew 83 bushel soybeans, and some folks will say, well, Jason, that's pretty good yield. That was dry land at the time. But we've only gone to 110.4 bushel soybeans. That was in 2021, and I ain't beat it since. And I'm kind of mad about this. And if you look at high yield to low yield, that's a 32% yield improvement. You remember what my corn number was? 60, yeah, you guys were listening. And I look at this is half. I'm at half the yield improvement of corn. And my brain works this way. If corn's giving me a 60% yield improvement, then soybeans ought to be doing it too. And if that was the case, my yield of soybeans at the PTI Farm should be 133 bushel beans. That would be a 60% yield improvement. And I'm nowhere close. I'm nowhere close to this. Now, what's the world record yield in soybeans? Here's your winners right here. In 2010, a gentleman by the name of Kip Cullers in Purdy, Missouri reported a yield of 160. And back in 2010, I said, that's amazing. He was a vegetable grower, lots of chicken litter to grow these high yield beans, but it's incredible. His record then got broke by Randy Dowdy twice. Randy almost grew 200 bushel beans in 2019. He's a grower from Georgia. And then one of his proteges, another farmer in Georgia, broke his record in 23 and did break 200 at 206. And then he broke it again this past year with a yield of 218 bushel soybeans. Ladies and gentlemen, 218 bushel per acre, that's a pretty good corn yield for some. He did it in soybeans. I'm like, how in the world did you do this? But I look at these numbers and I get even more frustrated because I've only been able to get 110.4 out of beans. I feel stuck. How do you measure success in beans? When you're growing beans, I know a lot of you guys are putting beans out. How do you measure success? At the end, I heard profit, that's pretty good. Most farmers, though, just think of yield, just like everything we've talked about thus far on these soybeans. You go to your crop insurance agent at the end of harvest and you report bushels. You don't report profit. National Corn Growers, we've talked about this, it's all yield report. Soybean yield is all bushels. I think we need to get rid of yield. This is one thing I've learned as I put this data together over the past couple of years. Yes, I'm frustrated with soybean yield, but the profits look pretty good in some cases. And so that's what we need to look at is on a return per acre basis. So how do we maximize profit in soybeans? That's the question of the day. Comes in an extra $73, number 4 on our list. Again, I'm going to feed the soybeans the same way we talked about in corn. Less dry, because I'm going to come in with the planter. Tell me your seeding rate on soybeans, because that's kind of a thing here with high yield beans. I don't know if that's working. There we go. What's your seeding rate on soybeans? There you see the options. Less than 100, 100 to 120, 120 to 140, 140 to 160, and then over 160. Where are you guys planting them? I think this is part of high yield. I do. Looks like the highest percentage is 140 to 160. My 110.4 was 75,000. Strip till, yeah. I don't have any less than 100. You guys must have cheaper seed over here. Then we come in with the planter. It's the same way. We're going to surround the soybean seed. We've got to be a little careful, because we don't want to salt these beans off, but we can do that, especially with this guy here. And before these beans even come up, remember, dry fertilizer underneath it, then I've got these bands, and the soybeans just absolutely love this. Look at this. Look at these trifoliates. I tell my teammates at the farm, these trifoliate, these leaves, they need to be as big as my head. Why? Why do they need to be as big as my head? I heard somebody say it, sunlight, that's our factory. The bigger the factory, the more workers you have, that's going to drive yield. Look at this, dry fertilizer only on the bottom. Dry fertilizer, 100% DAP and potash in the fall. We reallocate, put more on the planter, and look what happens. I'm in East Central Illinois. I don't have a long enough growing season to get high yield beans, so I got to cheat a little bit. I got to plant early, and I need to get these beans to mature faster. And this is one of the ways we're doing it. Here's my dryland beans. This is 2021. This is my 110.4, highest yield I've ever raised on beans. Dry land. Okay, this is just dry fertilizer, no irrigation. I bring irrigation and planter treatments in. I pick up 22 bushel. Okay, then I'm looking at planter plus foliar, and I'm up to 36 extra bushel soybeans. That's with water versus dry land. You look at the profits of this, that first year we did this, we made an extra $160 an acre on these soybeans. And I said, we got to do more of this. It can't be just broadcast or banned in fertilizer. In the fall, these soybeans are responding. We did it the next year, 2022. These are all irrigated. Here's my check, all dry fertilizer, 87.5 bushel soybeans. I add an at-plant program. I pick up 4 bushel and I make 65 bucks. I add the foliar program to it. That 4 bushel goes to 10 bushel, and I'm making 90. 23, the same trend continues. It's just like corn. Beans are giving me the same response. All dry fertilizer. Add the planter nutrition. This reminds me of a good story. A grower came to me, I think it was 2 years ago. I'm doing a meeting for the Illinois Soybean Association. A farmer comes up to me. He's from McLean County, Illinois, grabs my arm and says, Jason, I'm growing 80 bushel soybeans. And I said, that's pretty good. He says, well, it was. But he says, we've been stuck at 80 for a couple years now, and we want to know how to get the next 10 bushel. And I said, well, how are you feeding your soybeans? How are you fertilizing them? He said, well, Dad and Grandpa like bringing a spinner truck out and broadcasting DAP and potash. And I said, that's how we used to do it. I said, we're not broadcasting, we're banding. But listen, I go 100% dry fertilizer, I'm making the 80 bushel beans that he says he's getting. I reallocate, I drop my dry, I go on the planter, and I pick up the 10 bushel he's looking for. Did I make any money by doing it? Yeah, I made 75 bucks an acre. Then I put an in-season program in, and I take that 10, and I go to 16. And net profit is over $116 an acre. Yes, it's a little more work, but we're in the business of farming. I'm making bushels and making money, and this is working on soybeans. 24, this is 109 bushel soybeans this year. And you just see the trend of these yields going higher, and that's an $80 profit. Now, this one's interesting to me because look at the difference in profit between just putting nutrition on with the planter to doing the planter and adding the foliars. It's the same money. But man, that's a lot of work on the backside with all the extra applications and all that and all the extra cost. it kind of ate me up a little bit. So the foundational approach with putting enough nutrition on with furrow jet and conceal is getting the job done here. Here's a nature's one. It's just the trend. This is dryland. This is irrigated, but it's dry fertilizer only. And it's just how we feed these beans, they respond. Those are 101.4 bushel beans. Did we make any money? Yeah, we did.
What's your row spacing?
Row spacing, these are all 30-inch row soybeans because of my strip till. My strip till rig is on 30-inch, and I feel kind of stuck with that. It's one of the projects we're going to work on in 2025 to see if we can strip till and narrow up some of our beans. Guys, keep passing those free gifts around wherever you guys went. Keep them going. Yep. Here's AgroLiquid on beans. Again, we're just keep driving yield, and they're making money. This one, the cost got me a little bit, but here's the planter. The planter won. And so, again, the value of soybeans with furrow jet and conceal. I'll blast through a couple of these. But the trend is just, again, here's a planter nutrition versus coming in planter plus the foliar program. I don't know that I needed to do it. I got it right here. Same thing, just a different company. Now here I'm getting, the cost is eating me up on the backside, but I'm increasing yield. Here's another one. This is the difference of dry land versus irrigated. The trend happened on both. I'll blast through these real quick. Some people tell me, so Jason, you're irrigated, so you're going to get a higher return by putting in furrow products in like furrow jet and conceal. And really, you look at soybeans at plant on the planter. Yes, the irrigate is giving me a 4.4, but I'm still getting a 3% on dry land. And then here's the combination. Still getting a return on the dry land. Number 5 is phantom yield loss. You guys know what phantom yield loss is on corn? Help me out. When you guys go harvest corn, what's the moisture of the corn going to be when you start? Anybody want to share? 26. 25. I'm auctioneer again. 20. I'll tell you a little story. When I was younger, I loved harvest season. I couldn't wait to get the combine out and go harvest. And my granddad, he'd say, Jason, don't get too excited here. We're not going to go out and harvest corn until that corn's under 20%. And I said, Granddad, why are we going to wait till the corn's 20%? And he says, son, well, why are we going to pay somebody to dry our corn when it will just naturally dry down in the field for free? You guys ever thought about that? Yeah. And so we did. That's how we harvested corn. We got it under 20 and we ripped. I want to know, though, what harvest moisture is making me the most money, and if I leave that corn in the field to dry down, am I losing yield? That's the thing I want to look at. Here's our grain facility. We've got a dryer in here where I can dry my corn and I can store it and compare it going to town paying commercial prices, harvest wet corn to dry corn, and study the economics of it. I want to know, do corn hybrids really lose yield as they naturally dry down? And what is the most economical harvest moisture in corn? We want to go, our goal is 30% corn all the way down to number 2 yellow dent corn. And look at the economics of this thing. I didn't make 30% corn this year. It beat me. I got in it. You're 26. I think you mentioned 26% corn, right? And it was my highest yield at 26%. I let corn dry down a bit to 24. I lost 5.4 bushel. By the way, this is an average of 5 corn hybrids, all averaged together. I let corn go down to 19. I'm losing 8 bushel, and it went down to 14.2. Did you guys harvest a lot of dry corn this fall? We had a lot of 12 to 14% corn if you let it stay out in the field, and I'm fearful that we lost some bushels. Looking at this data, that's 1.4% shrink at 14% moisture. That's what an elevator is going to charge me, okay? Anybody manage a grain elevator here? Show of hands. Even if we got one in the audience, they ain't going to raise their hand, I guarantee you. This is a really good question, I think. You know, I know what it's costing me to dry corn at my local grain elevator. Here's the numbers. But do y'all know what shrink is? Shrink, you got to take the moisture out of the corn. You got to take that weight out of it to truly know what the dry is. I get charged 1.4% shrink. What do you all charge here in the great state of Ohio? 1.4? Yeah, very good. I hate to say this word, but Purdue did a study studying shrink, and Their number at 15% corn said shrink's actually 1.176, and I saw that number, and I went to my local grain elevator manager, and I said, well, if that's true, that shrink is really 1.176, why are you charging me 1.4? And his answer was, because we can. Do you know that you're paying a grain handling charge in the form of shrink, but nobody tells you that's what it is? There's extra charge on top. You're paying more shrink than what's there. We're trying to study this at the farm. I think it's real close to this number. I would confirm this, but I'd like to know why I'm paying 1.4. I had one elevator manager tell me, he said, you know, when you deliver corn to our elevator, we have to move it, and sometimes some of it spoils, and some of it we grind it, and we're losing some bushels. I said, so? I didn't do it. It's your fault. Why are you charging me? And again, he says, because we can. And so we look at these moistures of corn, even though my highest yield was coming from 26%, when I took my corn to the local elevator, they charged me for drying and they charged me for the shrink. 14.2% corn made me the most money. See, the grain elevator's got it figured out. They know what they can charge you, right? And that's why in the past, some folks have not been harvesting at these higher moistures because it's going to cost you. Now, I've got a grain facility. I've got an LP dryer. I paid $1.68 a gallon for propane, and I'm drying my own corn. And this whole thing changed. Matter of fact, the whole thing got inverted. Now I go down to 1.2% shrink, not 1.4, which makes a big difference. 15%, not 14, and 26% corn is making me the most money. But it was costing me the most money when I was hauling it to the grain elevator. Don't you think that's interesting? Say it again. They got to make money too. They're making it off you. But if I can dry it on my own farm, again, $1.68 propane, and I got some labor in it, right? However, the labor thing's interesting to me because my grain elevator never closes. My grain bins that I have, if we want to harvest all night long, we'll harvest all night long. It ain't closing at 5 p.m. There's a convenience factor to that, right? Yeah. Yeah, get harvest done as fast as possible so you can go plant them cover crops, do the tillage, strip till, things like that. Get it done faster. There's a convenience factor in that, right? But these numbers are really interesting to me. When I compare going to the elevator to doing it on the farm, look at this. 24.3, 26% corn. I'm making an additional $72 compared to taking it to the elevator. And so, ladies and gentlemen, people ask me, say, Jason, when are you going to start harvesting corn? We will harvest our corn right here at 24 to 26 until these numbers start telling me differently. The trick is I can't harvest all my corn at these moistures. Even if you wanted to, you can't because the corn's fighting you. It's wanting to dry down. So when are you going to start? If you got a lot of acres to cover, how wet a corn's that going to be? All depends on if you're drying it yourself or giving it to the elevator. All right, this is probably a good time to talk about autonomous technology. I'm going to play a video for you. I'm going to play 2 videos for you, matter of fact. We had some field days at the farm this year that we called agronomy and autonomy. And this is where we started bringing farmers in talking about autonomous equipment. Y'all know what autonomous equipment is? You know what it is? It's equipment that drive themselves. There's nobody in the cab. And I've never done this before, and I thought this was kind of interesting, and I kind of want to get your guys' feedback of whether you think this is going to be maybe something the growers are interested in the future. We started practicing in our sandbox area. This is our sandbox where when you guys come out in summer, we're planting and spraying. And I said, let's just park the planters, let's just park the sprayers, and let's get the combine out, my John Deere tractor and my Balzer grain cart. And I said, let's just simulate harvesting corn. How do we install the technology? What's it look like? Oh, by the way, look at that John Deere tractor. Look at, who's driving that thing? There's nobody in the cab of that tractor. What do you guys think about this? Yeah, exactly, yeah. I'm in the combine. You can see I got the auger out. I summons this system, and look at that auger right in the middle of this grain cart. Now, we're not harvesting corn. We're just playing, right, and trying to figure out how it works. And I thought, okay, we're all trained up. We're ready to go. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go harvest some corn. This is an inside PTI video. I'm going to take you to the cornfield. We're just going to harvest some corn today, and we're going to show you how autonomous grain cart technology works. Oh, I don't have any sound on it. Uh-oh. That's our problem. Let me do this. I'm going to fast forward. I'm going to save you a little bit of time today. Okay. We set our combine and our tractor up. I want to show you this. I got a 12-row head out in the field, augers out, monitor goes off. Says, Jason, your grain tank's full, you got to empty. Okay? I hit a button right there, ready to fill, and watch what happens with my auger cart. Nobody in the cab. There's nobody laying on the floor hiding. It starts running. Now, so right here at this moment in time, I can't see it. I can't see it in the mirror even. It's in a blind spot, and this is the scariest part of the whole thing when you first do this. You're like, was that tractor going to ram right in the back of that combine, or what's going to happen here? You can't see it. So look at this. Here she comes. I'm running 4 miles an hour, harvesting corn with 12-row head. Nobody in the cab. There is a cooler of beer in the cab, though, apparently, from one of my guys. Everybody always says that. Nobody's driving the tractor. Why do you need a cooler in there? That's a good question. We hit the unload, and look at this. We're unloading on the go, and she'll just stay right there in the center. Now, you can top it off. You can hit a little button, and you can go forward on the cart, or you can go backwards to top this whole system off. But this was kind of interesting using this technology this fall. For the first time, we were able to do this.
Does the tractor shut off when it goes back to sitting idle?
Oh, when you're done, let me fast forward just, that's a good question.
Hours.
Guys, keep giving prizes wherever you're at.
Yeah, turn that thing off. You don't need no air conditioning.
That's right, yeah.
Hours, those hours on the machine cost takes half our GPS.
Okay, so here we're going. We're done unloading. We're running out of corn. We go to the app then, just like we did when we told it to come catch us. We go to the app, we press the button, cancel task, and watch what happens. Tractor just stops. And it'll sit there and wait. Now, I can hit another button and stage it and tell it to go somewhere else in the field. But we're making lands in the field, as you can see in the video. And I keep the auger cart right in the center of the field and just let it horseshoe around and catch me on either side. What makes the cart go to the truck? You hit send to truck, and it'll go to home plate, is what I call it, home plate. The only problem with this technology right now is somebody's got to get in the tractor cab to load the truck. That's the only problem we have right now. We're trying to fix that. I think this, though, and I told our engineers at PTX Trimble, I said, you got the technology in the wrong piece of equipment. They're like, what are you talking about? I said, well, how come the autonomous part isn't the combine? How many of you guys manage your farm operation from the grain cart? Managing all the trucks, where they're going, coming in, getting the tickets. Who do you put in the combine cab? That's the easiest part of the whole operation. I don't want to offend anybody, sorry. I think the autonomous equipment ought to be the combine. Give me the dashboard in the auger cart and tractor, and I can set it, make changes or whatever.
Yeah, you need to be out behind the machine.
There you go.
You're not blowing it out the
I could run right there with the tractor, looking at grain loss, things like that, making sure the trucks are getting out. The engineers didn't agree with me, but it'll be interesting to see where this thing goes. Okay? Now, the next form of this is going to be autonomous tillage. Look at this. I'm not a big high-speed tillage fan by any means, but I like the fact that we can put autonomous technology on this high-speed tillage and let it work. Look at this. We're going 12 miles an hour here and nobody in the cab. That's a little scary. You come to PTI this summer, we'll show you the autonomous grain cart technology, and then we'll show you autonomous tillage as well. We'll just talk about it and say, what can it do? And maybe this is a fit in the future, but this is really exciting, especially with the labor shortage we have. Now, how many of you guys run the grain cart on your home farm? How many of you guys? I'm usually yelling and screaming at you guys, but when I run this grain cart, it's me. I'm not second guessing what the operator is going to do. And so we'll maybe talk about this a little later too. Traffic management is a big part of this. You guys that run the grain cart, you see, I have people that come to my farm and they say, Jason, I'd like to operate your grain cart because it's fun. And they're terrible at running a grain cart. If you would track where they go, there's like figure eights through the field. I'm like, where are you going? What are you doing? And when they do those figure eights in the field, what are they giving me? Especially if that grain cart's full. Compaction. We'll talk about weight management here in just a little bit, and I think this might be a nice fit addressing some of that. All right, number 6, real quick, fungicides on soybeans. You guys have been doing this for a long time. It does seem to pay off. Here you see some of the net returns on it. This should say insecticides because it comes along with it. Here's the thing though, in the absence of disease, I want to put fungicides on to make big beans. When you guys harvest beans, you want them big or you want them little? Bigger the beans, the higher the yield. So how are you going to get big beans? Part of the fungicide applications is helping us with this. Here's my 110.4 highest yield I've ever had. They were the biggest soybeans I've ever raised at 2,084 seeds per pound. I haven't done it since. I haven't done it since. We've been frustrated. This past year we grew 109. We couldn't finish. We ran out of irrigation water. They were 2,725 seeds per pound. I was setting up a bumper crop, but I couldn't finish. And I had small beans. I couldn't finish on the backside. Some people say, well, how are you applying some of these fungicides? We're doing it with that right there. It's a big trend in the industry. Matter of fact, this rig is coming from Trust Services here in Ohio. We're using their rigs to do this. And this is 24 data, about a half a bushel better on soybeans versus a Hagee at 20 gallon to the acre. 2-year data would say about a $4 gross advantage. Now you just need to go and look, what's the difference in cost of application versus a ground rig and one of these. You'd have to look at it. More of the story is, the props are spinning, pushing air down. It makes the soybeans dance, is what I call it. They make them dance, they open up to get the fungicide down. Do you know when you put a soybean fungicide on your soybeans, fungicides only move upward in the plant. So if you only spray the top half of the bean, you are not protected on the bottom side. And that's where diseases are going to happen. They're going to come up, and you come a long way for nothing. So make them dance, push the fungicide in as deep as you can to get protection, and that's why I think this is working well. Number 7, let's bring Mark up. Mark's going to talk about furrow force, the closing system, pressure on the planter.
Alrighty guys, so like Jason said, my name is Mark Robbie. I'm part of the team there at PTI, and I'm going to cover a couple different topics today on our top and bottom 10 that I've kind of worked on over the past few years at PTI. So the first one here is furrow force closing system pressure study. It made number 7 on our top 10 list here, bringing us an additional $66.91 to the acre. So for all of our closing wheel studies that we do at the farm, our main objective is just to evaluate the yield and economics of 6 different, distinctly different closing wheels in 4 different major tillage practices. So when we're thinking about the closing system, we're always thinking of 2 main goals. And if you've heard any of us talk closing systems before, you've probably heard these 2 main goals. Number 1, we want to come through, lift and fracture that sidewall and just blow out any compaction that we made, any sidewall smear that we made or anything. So we want to act like we weren't there. And then the second goal of the closing system is we want to knock all that air pocket out. So we want to come through and make sure we lift and fracture that sidewall as well as blowing any air out that we left in that furrow. So like I said, we tested 6 closing wheels this year. I'll quickly run through what each of those are. But before I do that, I want you guys to jump on your phones, and the pictures should show up a little bit better on your cell phones. Just tell me what you guys are running in this area. What's your traditional closing system? What's the closing system that the majority of you guys are running here? Hopefully it's working on your phones. Maybe not. It's not. Okay, we'll just skip it then. That's all right. All right, so like I said, I'm going to jump through the 6 different ones that we tested this year. First one, just your traditional dual rubbers, what we see on the majority of the marketplace, but just your traditional standard 2 rubber wheels. The next one is the Yetter dual poly twisters. So that traditional kind of rubber wheel on the inside with the nice twisted nubs on the outside. Third system is that Yetter, but dual cast twisters. So this outer ring here is cast. It's a heavier system. With the same style nubs on it as well. Dual germinators, so this system we got in last year for the first time, and we take off the outer ring on a rubber wheel and snap this green ring on. It's a lot heavier of a system, requires a little less downforce pressure, but it's worked pretty well for us at the farm. Also the Martin-Till F crusher, so this is another wheel that we used at the farm this year that worked pretty well for us. And we compare all of those systems to active automated furrow force that Precision Planting offers. So like I showed this slide a little bit ago, we want our closing system to accomplish both of those tasks for us. And through our data at PTI, we believe that a single stage system can do one of those, but it cannot do both of those. So that's why we compare those to furrow force, active two-stage system that we believe can accomplish both of those tasks. Now, I said we test those closing wheels in 4 different tillage systems. So the first one, conventional tillage, bringing a deep ripper in 12, 14 inches deep, turning that soil black, really working out any compaction that we made last year. Typically, this system is going to be your easiest to close environment, nice black soil. Second system is strip till. We use a Kuhn-Krause Gladiator bar here, pulling a Montag cart, as Jason's talked about strip till this morning, making a nice wide 10-inch strip to run our planter gauge wheels on in the spring. Third system, vertical tillage. So we're using a Kuhn accelerator here in this video. And for us, vertical tillage is very minimal tillage. Pretty much residue management is all we're doing at the farm. And then finally, the last system is no-till. So we're just walking right into standing stalks or standing bean stubble and just no-till planting there. So if this one works on your phone, we can try it again. How many of you have ever done flag testing? If you've been to precision meetings, you've probably heard us talk about flag testing. I'll quickly run over what that is. So when we're out scouting and we see that first corn plant pop up out of the ground, we are going to measure off 1/1000th of an acre, and we're going to flag every plant that's poking up in that first 12 hours. We're going to come back again in 12 more hours, and again and again. So we'll come back at 24 hours, 36 hours, 48 hours, and 48 plus. And then we will take those years to yield in the fall and compare what that 12-hour difference actually cost us yield-wise. So looks like just shy of half of you have done that before, so that's good, and we'd encourage all of you to try it at least once on your farm. So when we look at the overall emergence per tillage, comparing all the different closing wheels, so this is an average of all the closing wheels in those 4 different tillages. You can see conventional tillage, we get 94% of those plants up in the first 12 hours. So like I said, that's the easiest to close system. Typically, you're going to have the nice black soil on the top, easier to retain moisture, and it's just going to be a better system for those plants to emerge through. And then when you jump all the way down to no-till, you can see we take a big hit, down to 70% emergence in those first 12 hours. Hardest to close system. Sometimes it's really, really hard to get it closed in that no-till environment. So when we look at what the cost of those 12-hour emergers actually cost us to yield, in that next 12 hours, so 24 hours total, we're losing 8% of yield. We go another 12 hours to 36 hours, we're losing 31% of yield. 48, we're down to 69% yield loss, and then any of those plants that are left all the way to 48 plus hours is an 80% yield loss. So typically that 48 plus hour plant, at that point it's just a weed in your farm, and it's really not going to give you anything. So let's jump back on and see if this one works. It says, on average, how long do you think it takes to get 100% emergence on your farm? Looks like most of you are voting 24 hours. That's good, though. If you can get them all up in 24, that's pretty good. All right, so now we look at all the different closing wheels on the bottom of this graph, and we see the average yield loss per system compared to automated furrow force. So this is also an average across the four tillages. You can see the dual rubbers were the worst for us, down almost 8 bushel compared to furrow force. And then the rest of them here were kind of all between 2 and 3 bushels. So still down quite a bit from furrow force, but not as terrible as the dual rubbers. You take that times the price of corn, show economics. Dual rubbers in that case 2-stage system are losing us about $30 an acre. And then all the rest of them are right there around $10, $11, $12 an acre. So still seeing a economic hit there, but not quite as high in these as in those dual rubbers. So now I talked about furrow force. So furrow force is our active 2-stage automated system that we can control from the cab. So this year, something different we did is we did a pressure study comparing 15 pounds of pressure, 35 pounds of pressure, and then 55 pounds of pressure. So with this little module right here, paired with the airbag and the load cell, I can watch that from the cab and monitor my closing system pressure and make adjustments on the fly as I need to. So, like I said, we did light, standard, and heavy in all 4 tillages. So conventional tillage, easiest to close system, heavy furrow force, picked up a little bit of a yield gain there, and light furrow force lost us 5 bushel compared to automated standard. Strip till, 3.6 bushel up at heavy furrow force, 7.5 down on light. Vertical till, 4.6 up, and then same on the light, we're down 2.8. And then we get into no-till, hardest to close environment. That's where we see the biggest yield increase in that heavy downforce, or that heavy closing system pressure on furrow force, picking up the 16.4 bushel. You times that by the commodity price that we used for corn this past year, that's the number right there that made the top 10. That's $67 to the acre. So you can kind of see a trend there in all 4 tillages. Heavy furrow force was the best this year in our area across all 4. If you have to hedge your bet, typically we'll go a little heavier on furrow force than too light. So with that, he's back up for multi-genetic.
All right, number 8 on our list is near and dear to my heart. On our home farming operation, we don't have a whole lot of good dirt. And back in 2009, I think it was, I'm in the planter tractor at home and I'm planting up and down these hills, and I got auto steer on the planter tractor driving itself, and I just swivel my seat and I look out the back window. I'm looking at my planter and say, on these side hills that I'm planting right now, do I have the right corn hybrid in the planter to maximize production for these rough, kind of drought-stressed soils? And a lot of times the answer was no. I do have some good ground, just not near enough of it on some of these farms. I get down the hill into the good ground and I look back at the planter and say, do I have a rock star offensive hybrid to maximize yield there on that good dirt? And a lot of times the answer was no. And I said, this system is broken, we need to fix it. So multi-genetic planting, this is taking 2 corn hybrids out in the field, addressing the variability and maximizing production for each area of the field. It's really simple. It's a scary word, I think, multi-genetic planting, but really it's pretty simple. And if you have soil variability, I think this is the answer. Now, how many of you folks sell seed? This is where everybody's like, oh, I sell seed, but I don't know if I should raise my hand. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. You seed salesmen, you've gone to farmers with your sales pitch. You come into my house and kitchen table, and we talk about buying corn from you. And one of the things that you seed salesmen will tell me is, Jason, it's awful important to plant the right corn hybrid on the right acre. You seed salesmen, you ever said that before? Oh, yeah, you have. You farmers, you ever heard it before? Yeah. Is it a true statement? It's correct. It's right. But do y'all do it? This is where I say talk is cheap. We don't do it. We say it all the time, but we don't go do it. You look at it as the whole field scenario. This field's good. We're going to plant this Rockstar hybrid. This one over here, no, it's drought prone. We're going to plant a different hybrid on it. What I'm talking about is taking that concept and doing it inside a field to address the soil variability. This is our first multi-genetic corn planter we ever made. This was back in 2012. We had hydraulic motors on this planter. The back 8 rows, this is 30-inch rows, the back 8 rows would be locked and loaded with a Rockstar corn hybrid. Offense, plant that on your good soils. On the front, it's hard to see, but there's another 8 rows up here on another hydraulic motor. We'd load it with our kind of defensive hybrid that'd be good for our drought-prone soils. And this planter just flipped hybrids, turned on and off for each set of 8 rows as we planted through the field. This is what it looked like when we changed hybrids. There's a reason why we're changing here. It's because the soil's changed, and it did allow me to ground truth it. But I'll tell you, it was pretty ugly. Doing this, every time we changed the hybrid in the field, this was ugly. My neighbors laughed at me. They really did. I went to Trimble. This was 2011 when we first did this. And I said, you guys at Trimble need to make my auto steer on my tractor so when I change hybrids, I move over 8 inches. And they said, Jason, we cannot do that. We're not going to write software for this. And so I said, well, wait a minute. The auto steer is based on where the GPS receiver is on the roof of the cab. So every time we changed hybrids, I just put an actuator on this and I moved the GPS receiver 8 inches. The problem is to move 8 inches, it took 13 seconds to move 8 inches. But that receiver would move, and the tractor, when it's in auto steer, it would just move over 8 inches. It was pretty cheap to do. That was a $100 actuator, electric actuator. But it was just slow. And so in the field, when I changed hybrids, I'd get this little curve, okay? We got a little smarter. This is a 372 Trimble, and this is on a case tractor, and I'm hanging off the ladder of the tractor taking this video. Got a little faster with this. The monitor beeped saying, Jason, we're going to change hybrid, and then all of a sudden that GPS receiver would slide over. This is a $1,000 actuator. It would move over, and this would go so fast it almost jerk your neck a little bit as the tractor would move over. But my point is that we did things to test multi-genetic planting that no farmer should ever have to do. But this is what we had to do because there was nothing available. I went to John Deere, I went to Case, I went to Kinsey, I had a checkbook in my back pocket, and I said, I'd like to buy a multi-genetic corn planter. And all of them laughed at me and said, Jason, that doesn't exist. The guy from Kinsey, I'll never forget this, when I walked out of his office, he said, Jason, I said, what? He said, if you test any multi-genetic data, we'd sure like to see it. And I turned around and I said, I bet you would. And I walked out. Here's what we do. We just take soil variability. This is soil organic matter. The red is drought-prone soils, and the green is my best. And I just load a corn hybrid up, and I plant it just like that. We can do VSET select. This is where, we can take this meter. We've got 2 meters on the row, and we can change. We can make scripts in the field. We can make pictures. We're so accurate with this thing. It's right on the money. Some of you want to go MSET. We can change hybrid. We can change seeding rate, and we can also put a speed tube on this thing and plant fast. We can do this. But we're going to your CCS planter. We're just loading them with 2 different hybrids and changing according to the soil on the farm. Here's my yield data. This is from the PTI Farm every single year, 2018 to 2024. We work with our seedsmen, identify the areas of variability, and we plant the right corn hybrid. Has it worked every time? No. In each of the good soils and poor soils, I've got it wrong 1 time over the 7 years. If you take 1 divided by 7, that's 85%. Ladies and gentlemen, my track record for choosing the right corn hybrid is 85% correct. What is your track record? No one knows. No one knows because we're not testing this in the field. Farming. Some may consider farming a gamble, right? 85% odds of winning, is that good? That's pretty exciting, isn't it? If you would go to Vegas and I would tell you, you got an 85% chance of winning, would you come home with money? I think you would. That's what we're trying to do here, just increase our odds of winning. This works. You seed salesmen are right. Planting the right hybrid on the right acre, it matters. My challenge to you is, go do it. Don't talk it, go do it. On average, we're picking up 11 bushel of corn, and I'm making 50 bucks an acre by doing this. I think it works. Soybeans, though, what about soybeans? Oh, I'm not doing so good on soybeans. I'm more of a corn guy than a bean guy, and I haven't been doing this on soybeans, and I really want to improve on this. And so this year, we have a joint project with a couple different companies, one being BASF. I was just in North Carolina the past few days, and I talked with some of these folks out there. BASF, we're going to take their Zetavo seed soybean lineup. We're working with Advanced Agrilytics and their research arm of Ag Ingenuity Partners, and we're going to tack this to do multi-variety soybean planting. Here's why we're doing this. I'm just going to go right to this slide right here. What does all this mean? Listen, there's certain varieties of soybeans that offer yield in different places is the best way I can describe this. Soybeans have yield personalities. For example, take this bean right here. Look at this big, bushy soybean. It puts pods on the main stem of the plant. Think about real estate here. Think of the architecture of this plant. It's going to put pods on the main stem, but then this soybean will branch. And guess what? It'll put pods on the branches. You got more real estate. You're picking up more acres, kind of in a way. Then we have varieties that only go main stem. They can't branch at all. The genetics say that it just can't do it. If you knew that information, how would you place these varieties in the field? Let's take the big bushy soybean. You guys have had these before on your farm. Where are we going to plant these? You're going to plant that on your drought-prone soils? Let's say you plant that big bushy bean, branchy bean on drought soils, and it don't rain and you get drought. The soybean variety goes under stress. What's the first thing it's going to do when it goes into defensive mode to protect itself? It's going to blow off the branches. it's going to try to keep itself alive, and it's going to say, you branches, you're gone. And if it can't compensate by putting more pods on the main stem, ladies and gentlemen, you've just lost yield. So we're going to plant that type of bushy, branchy variety in our good soils. And we're going to let it branch. And what are we going to do to seeding rate? It's part of the package. We're going to lower seeding rates, encourage it to branch. Okay? What about these guys? We're going to put these on our good dirt? No, we're going to put those on the side hills, the tops of the hills. And what are we going to do to seeding rate on these? I need more real estate, so I'm going to plant more beans per acre. That's how we're going to attack this thing. But you got to bring me a soybean lineup, your portfolio, that shows me the personality of these beans before I can even start this program. That's why we have the partners in place for it this year. We know yield is pods per acre times seeds per pod times weight of the seed. Knowing that formula, let's figure out what the environment is. Is it drought? What's the elevation, fertility, so on and so forth. And then we attack it. In the future with beans, it might even be trait selection, something that I learned from BASF with soybean cyst nematode resistance. If you've got some hot spots in the field, we might even be able to change the trait sometime. This was data from BASF as we got talking. They showed me average yield of these 3 varieties. We'll just call them A, B, and C. And I said, guys, there's no difference in yield with any of them. And they said, wait a minute. If we dissect the data where the yield came from, in drought-prone soils, there's a 7 bushel difference between them. In good soils, there's a 5 bushel difference. And in poorly drained, saturated soils, there's almost a 9 bushel difference. Ladies and gentlemen, that's just variety. Now let's add the seeding rate to this thing, right? It's going to affect your seed cost. And we're going to singulate them as well. And I think that those numbers right there, the 5, 7, and 8, can go to 10. Ladies and gentlemen, if we can change the variety in the right acres of the farm, plant them at the right seeding rate, and singulate them, I think this is a 10 bushel win. 10 bushel win times $10 soybeans is $100 per acre. Do you remember what my corn win was? 50. This could double the profitability of corn. I think this is a big deal. But we focused on corn in the past, not soybeans. I do need some help. We are putting a program together. There's a QR code up here on the screen. If you're a farmer that would like to work with us on multi-variety soybean planting, we'd love to work with you. We've got guys that have signed up all around the country. If you're one, scan that code. We'd love to hear from you. Okay? I'll leave that up for just a second. And you don't have to have MSET or VSET technology on your planter. You just have to have a dual CCS planter that can change seeding rate. That's the only thing you got to have. Okay? All right, number 9 on our list. We're almost there to 10. We're almost there. Is Xyway. This is where we're putting a fungicide in furrow through FurrowJet. It's done really well for us. Comes in at number 9, an extra $60. Xyway is a strobe fungicide called flutriafol, and it is the longest lasting residual fungicide in the market. What we're doing with this is we put it in furrow at planting time to give us protection up front. There's our planter. We're putting it on as we plant in furrow. And what we can do is, it's interesting with this flutriafol, it's really concentrated. As we test the corn plant through the growing season, we'll pick up the flutriafol in the main stem and in the leaves throughout the season. So it truly is systemic in offering protection. Here you can see all the different growth stages we tested it at and where we're finding it. Here's why it's working for us. We've been looking for a product that'll control crown rot. That's our problem on our farm, and I think this is a product that works for this. This is not a fungicide you're going to put on at planting and say, who cares if I get tar spot at tassel time? That's not what I'm talking about with a fungicide. This is for crown rot and physoderma. This picks up. You guys ever have gone out close to harvest time and you do the tipper test? You take that corn stalk and you push it over to its neighbor and you see if the stalk will break. Shows you when you need to harvest. If you're breaking a bunch, it's probably a result of this problem right here. So look how clean that pith is. That's what we're shooting for. Keep that plant alive. Don't let your corn plants die. When you harvest corn, does your corn plant need to be dead? Think about that for a moment. Does your corn plant need to be dead when you harvest it? No, you want it alive if you're doing the job right. And this is setting the stage up early for that. Yes?
Is there a negative effect on
Is there a negative effect on soybeans? You're saying when we come back in with soybeans next year? Yes. I have not seen that. Matter of fact, when flutriafol came to the market, it's an FMC product. FMC came to me and said, hey, will you test this flutriafol through FurrowJet wings on soybeans? They were going to label it in beans first. They weren't even thinking about corn. But they told me, though, this is really interesting. For you guys have used Xyway, the folks at FMC told me, they said, don't put that flutriafol on the seed. It's a little hot. We tested the soybeans. We got a little yield gain out of it. They thought it would help with sudden death. But they never came out and labeled it for soybeans. They labeled it for corn. And so when it came out, I said, hey, what about, you told me it was going to be a little hot if I put it on the seed. And they said, we don't know what you're talking about. Do whatever you want. Guess what? We ran into a problem when we put that flutriafol on the corn seed, especially sweet corn. So you got to get it off the seed. FurrowJet wings and conceal would be our way to do it. Here's for conceal, getting it off to the side. I do think that's too far away, but our yield data would say that here's conceal. This past year, a 16 bushel gain. When we go in the wings of FurrowJet, though, you can see the high yield from it, irrigated, but a little bit better in the wings. Don't put it center. That strobi's just a little hot. It's going to screw up the metabolism of that seed, and you're going to get a late emerger. It'll come up, but it's going to be late, and we all know, Mark talked about it. You get those late emergers, those are going to be runts all season. But those are some really nice gains, and putting it in conceal is costing me 12 bucks. All right, number 10. Mr. Larkin's going to come up and talk about a new product we tested, and I think he's even got some samples he's going to pass out.
Morning, guys. Like Jason said, my name is Jacob Larkin, one of the members at the PTI Farm. And we were kind of excited when this one made the top 10. This is one of the new studies we brought on the farm this year. It is Smart Hydrogel Soil Moisture Retainer. And so the guys are going to pass around some samples here at the back of the tables. When you look at them, once you look at them, just pass them up. We only have enough for one for each line here. But when you look at them, each sample has the same amount of dirt or same amount of sand in it and same amount of water. But one of the containers has the hydrogel and the other one doesn't. You'll be able to see it pretty clearly. Stick your hand in, feel it. You'll be able to notice it, and it's pretty cool. But the hydrogel made us just shy of $60 this year. And as you can see in this picture, it's a water-absorbing granular. So we can either band it with an insecticide unit on the back of our planter, or we can apply it with our fall fertilizer, just spread it over top. Application rates are a little different when you spread it, but not much of a problem there. And so once we add water to it, it absorbs just under 400 times its weight with that water. And so how we did it was with dry set precision planting granular metering system. You can see it mounted there on the back of the insecticide box. We just pulled that insecticide unit off, mounted this guy up. And so you can see it here, it's a little closer. This is dry fertilizer in here, but you can see with the auger in the middle, we have different augering systems with this, so you can run multiple different products through this metering system. Easier clean out than before, and all of it's controlled through the 2020 in the cab. And so looking at the yield here, we had a 19.2 bushel gain, and then just short of that $60 bushel advantage. So the big thing with this year was we were pretty short on rainfall later in the season. Earlier in the season, we had plenty of rain. We were actually over average, but then it started falling off pretty fast. So when you put this stuff down early in the season, it absorbed a lot of that extra water and held it in the soil, throughout the growing season, and the plants could use it when they needed it. So, any questions? Yeah, so we're banding it at 15 pounds to the acre, and if you're broadcasting, double it. So when you're banding it, it's right there, easily accessible to the plant. When you're banding it, we just need that little more for it to reach out.
Is that an every year thing?
So as of right now, we're thinking this stuff's good for 3 years, and then it biodegrades in the soil, and you just add it again. But this is only our first year testing it, and the company is pretty new too, so we're still working on that. And then we're going to switch over to our failures at the PTI Farm. This is a picture me and Mark took of Webster pulling out of a field this past fall. So, you want to go through all of them, or? Okay, so I'm back up here again. Yeah, you shut off. I'm back up here again. There we go. With number 1, too early planted corn, losing us $260. And so May 11th was our optimum planting date this year. As you showed in the last slide, we were a little wet earlier in the spring, but at 63 bushels there on March 13th. It was pretty cold out still and kind of wet as well, and that's where we lost our money. So you can see here our average plant date from 2018 to 2024. You know, that third week of April to that first week of May has been our optimum plant date over the past couple of years. And so flip that over. So we do plant date, and then we also do planting date with starter fertilizer. This is the protocol for our starter fertilizer. And we're doing that in our 5 bands. You know, we got the 2 with conceal, then we have the 3 in furrow there with furrow jet. And so this is a big one for us. You know, with that 5-way band, where are we placing our fertilizers? So directly over the seed, this is where we're going to keep our sugars and biologicals. In the wings, this is where we're going to put our phosphorus and zinc. And then in conceal, you know, our nitrogen, potassium, sulfur, and boron. For this, you know, when we're planting corn early, it's wet and cold. You know, the soil below 50 degrees, that phosphorus right there in the wings, you know, we're kind of cheating a little bit. We can't get that phosphorus to move early in the season, so when we put it right next to that plant, it can get to it pretty easily. And that showed out. It helped us quite a bit here early season. That April 16th and May 6th, right around that 12 to 13 bushel advantage. And then once the soils warm up, you know, we can get stuff moving in the soil. Roots are getting a little larger. We don't need as much of that fertilizer as close to that plant. Flip that over to economics. We had a 13 bushel gain in April 16th, and then a $31 gain on May 6th. We're going to bring Mark back up.
Jump after this one. All right, number 2 on our bottom 10 was liquid versus dry strip till fertilizer. So that was number 2, losing us $225 to the acre. So you've heard us talk quite a bit today about strip till. It's a prime thing that we do at the PTI farm. We believe in it pretty strongly. And for all of our dry studies, we use this Kuhn-Krause Gladiator bar pulling a Montag cart. And then for our liquid studies, we use a Black Eagle strip till bar for all the liquid plots. So you can see it's a similar bar to the Kuhn-Krause. It's a shank style unit. Big row cleaners on the front, getting the residue out of the way and making a nice clean strip for us to plant on next spring. So for my protocol for the liquid versus the dry plots, I take 100% rates of dry and cut them in half to 50% rate. And then I cut that in half again and do 25% rates. And I compare those rates of nutrients, nutrient pound for nutrient pound, in a liquid form. So 100% rate of liquid, 50% rate of liquid, and then 25% rate of liquid. And you can see the respective costs. Boy, there we go. Maybe I'm dead. I can yell. Thank you. All right, so you guys can see the respective costs of the individual programs there on the screen. So you can see my 100% rate of dry fertilizer is about $160 to the acre. And then you compare that nutrient for my 100% liquid, and it's almost $360 to the acre. So we have a big price increase there from going from dry to liquid. This is that Black Eagle bar running, making strips and corn stalks. You can see, just like the Kuhn bar, it's a shank style unit, making a nice wide strip for me to run my planter on next spring. And here it is in bean stubble. Also making a nice strip there to run next spring.
You use the same strip each year?
So we move 15 inches. So like in this instance, you know, my bean plants were here, so my corn will be here next year, and then the year after, the beans will be back in that strip. So beans are always in the same strip, corn's always in the same strip. That's how we do it. So on this Black Eagle bar, for liquid control, I'm using a precision planting pump stack paired with EMHD and EM flow sense. So this pump stack is Precision Planting's hydraulic pump. It's mounted out here on the side of the bar. That's what's gonna pump my liquid to my row control modules, which are located right down here. And that's that EMHD and EM flow sense that I can control from the cab to get accurate rate to each of those rows on the strip till bar. Like Jason showed this graph earlier, these are the numbers that I'm using to calculate this, 635 for DAP and 445 for potash in the fall of 23. And this is how each of those programs responded yield-wise in corn. So you can see liquid 100% actually picked up the biggest yield increase at 60 bushel, compared to dry 100% picked up just shy of 50 bushel. But I had overwhelming, pretty good yield response across all of those programs. Now, when you take that times the price of corn minus all the expenses for those programs, you can see how they responded economically. So obviously the liquid lost money just due to that really high cost of product, and all of the dry programs were economical, anywhere from $30 to almost $100 to the acre. Flip to soybeans, and you can see I picked up a lot less yield, especially on the liquid programs, about 2-3 bushel there, and then on the dry programs, anywhere from 10 to 4 bushel. Once again, times the price of corn or soybeans minus the product cost. This is where that big loser came in at that liquid 100%, just due to the $360 to the acre cost compared to the dry program that only cost $160 an acre, but we were still just shy of being profitable there as well. All right.
All right, the rest is up to you guys. Before we eat lunch, is there anything else on the bottom 10 that you'd like to talk? We got 20 minutes. We don't have time to go through all of them. Soybean row width. We're going to go to number 6. Yeah. Okay. Get your phones out. You guys tell me, what row width are you guys in? I asked you earlier what population you were planting your beans at. I think you were all 140 to 160, if I remember right. But what row width are you in? Let's see where the votes come in here. Now, I'm 30-inch rows because why? You remember? My strip till rig, that's exactly right. I feel stuck with this. And guys will come to me and say, Jason, you're strip tilling in 30-inch rows. Are you giving up any yield because you're in wide rows versus narrows? And the answer is yes, I'm giving up yield. You guys are 15-inch rows primarily, 70% of the room in 15 inches. We got some drills. I call those controlled spills, by the way. We got some 20s, we got some 30s, and we even got some wider than 30-inch rows, okay? Our data would say this. And I'm taking 30-inch rows and I'm comparing it to an average of my 15s and 20s. I don't think there's any difference in yield between a 15-inch row and a 20-inch row. Matter of fact, I think they're the same until you spray them. Then the advantage may go to the 20s, because when you spray your beans, I kind of have a problem with this. You know, we put technology on planters to plant beans and get every bean up out of the ground, and we do it. But then you guys get weeds out in your fields and you bring a sprayer out and your sprayer tires run over and kill your soybeans. Good job, congratulations. In 15-inch rows, you're driving over beans and killing them. What about 20-inch rows? I got a Hagee sprayer with a 14.9 tire and I can fit down a 20-inch row. It don't run them over. So there, I think the advantage would go to 20s, I think. It's when you just want a really big boom, so you're not driving over as much. But our data would say 19 to 2024, we're losing 3 bushel per acre being in 30-inch rows compared to a narrow of 15s or 20s. However, if I can plant my soybeans early, I think the 30s will run side by side with the narrows. But you take the early planting away, and I'm struggling a bit. Yeah.
Population difference between the 15s and the 30s.
Can you pull that one up? It's on the soybean top 10 at the very bottom. Yep, we can pull that one up. You're getting close. Right there, 441. Okay, yep, there we go. So this is data from 19 to 2024 in 30-inch rows. Now you'll notice that we test from 50,000 on the low end all the way to 200,000, and all these are negative numbers. So not one seeding rate has won over this time frame every single year. Okay, and so what we look at is, when we look at the economics, we find out which seeding rate has cost us the least amount of money. Does that make sense there? And so when we evaluate that in 30-inch rows, 100,000 final stands have been our economic optimum. They have made us the most money in 30-inch rows. As we go to 15s and 20s narrow, that number shifts to 125,000. Now, when it comes to seeding rate and final stands, I get a lot of phone calls in the spring sometimes from growers and say, Jason, I think I might have a replant scenario. Will you come look at my beans and tell me if I need to rip them up and start over again? And before I even think about getting into the pickup truck and going to this grower's farm, I'm going to ask him a question. What do you suppose that question's going to be? Oh, I heard a lot. I don't know that I understood them all, though. What's the population? Nope, that's not the first question. How they spaced? Good. That was a good one, but no, not the first. Oh, somebody said, who said that? Plant date. When did you plant the beans? Because listen, ladies and gentlemen, we can get by with some really low populations if I plant the beans early. If I plant them later, I've got to increase my seeding rates. And so you've got to tell me when you planted them, and that'll determine what our final stands need to be. Early planting, you can get by with a lot less. I've seen 50,000 work just fine. Yeah. Double crop beans. So double crop beans, if we were going to come in, grow wheat, and then put beans in, we're going to have to plant them at a much higher population. Yeah, because our growing season has been eliminated almost in half. And so generally with that, we want to go narrow row spacing and increase the pops. Yep, good question. I don't grow a lot of wheat, though. It's just hasn't been profitable. The only time guys will grow wheat in our area is if they've got livestock and need to spread manure, or if they need to put tile in. That's the only time guys are growing it, because it hasn't been profitable compared to corn or beans. I like what it does to the soil, though. Yeah. Last time I grew wheat, we grew 120 bushel wheat, and I guess I did a Michael Jordan. I said, I'm going out on top. That was a good yield. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, you want to go put up your top 10 again?
Jason,
Yeah.
you ask planting date or emergent date?
Oh, planting date and emergent date, when you plant earlier, those could be quite different, right? Yeah, a lot of times we'll plant beans early and they'll just sit in the ground and wait 3-4 weeks before they come up. And that's a good thing, by the way. Make them soybeans hurt. Put a little stress on them so they get mad at you and come back with a vengeance. Yeah, yeah. I think that's half the battle with beans. I really do. Yeah. All right, what else on this bottom 10 list excites anybody? There's a lot of data in there. Short corn, number 9. We're going to do number 9 and 10 together because I think they go hand in hand. Oh, we got to do number 8 too. We got to do number 8. Yeah, we got to do number 8. You want to do number 8 first?
I mean, they're in order.
They're in order, right? Look at this guy. Yeah, he's got it. All right. Number 8 is incorrect weight management and tire inflation. Just a show of hands, does anybody have any equipment on their farm where you can inflate and deflate your tires on the tractor and or planter? Show of hands. Does anybody change inflation on your tires during the planting season? Okay. You got what?
I've had flats.
You've had flats. Give him a prize. That's awesome, right there. The John Deere hat, right there. That's great. That's definitely a change in inflation. Yes, yes. So, remember what I was talking about earlier with the grain cart, the autonomous grain cart technology, and my drivers driving all over the field and causing compaction? This has been a sore subject on the farm, and we've been trying to analyze the traffic patterns we have on the farm, okay? Now, I'm gonna show you some data of our planter and tractor. Now, we have an inflation system on the tractor where in the monitor, we can suck air out of this when we unfold the planter and start planting. We'll go down to like 6 PSI. When we fold up and go down the road, it'll go to 60. Okay, there's an air system on the tractor. There's also an air system on the planter where we can take the tires and it looks like we got flat tires when we're planting. We'll just take all the air out of them and just, and that helps with pinch row compaction. When we go to the field and we use the weight management system of the planter, and we also use the tire inflation correctly on the tractor and planter, we see our highest yields. And then it's a matter of, okay, let's keep the weight management system on, but let's pump the tire pressure up that you would use to go down the road. And when we did that, we lost 11.5 bushel of corn and almost $47 an acre by just the tire inflation on the tractor. Then we turn the weight management off and we go to low tire pressure, and we only lost 4.4 bushel. So this tire inflation thing appears to be kind of important. We turn weight management off and we go to high tire pressure, two things that are just the opposite of what we want to do, and we see our highest yield losses of 17.4 bushel, and that's the $71 that made the bottom 10. So an air inflation system for a tractor and planter is probably in the neighborhood of 20,000, something like that for the tractor side, and then another for the planter side. But with this number of $70, and that's way too high of a price, by the way. And I don't like it. I look at it as a farmer and say, oh my gosh, I want technology to pay for itself in 1 year. However, I look at this number right here, weight management off and high tire pressure, that would pay for itself in 600 acres using $4 corn. For many of you, that is 1 year. So this is interesting. I do think the price needs to come down though. Now let me go back a slide. Look at this right here. This is where we ran a sprayer pre-plant and then planted our corn. Do you think we're going to have any compaction where that sprayer ran? Yeah, those are like cookie cutter tires in my opinion. Those are my 14.9s, right? And I'm leaving a track mark. I'm making compaction in the field, and I want to analyze the yield of these two rows to find out when I make a tire track in the field. I don't care if it's from a sprayer or a tractor or whatever. I want to figure out how many of them I have and if my yield is going down. Now, pinch rows. You ever heard of pinch rows on a planter? You guys ever heard of that? Is there a yield loss when you make pinch rows? Oh, I see you guys going like this. Yeah, how much? This is where nobody says anything. Because you all don't know. You want to know why? Because our corn head's the dumbest piece of farm equipment we have on the farm. Ladies and gentlemen, I come to you from Precision Planting. We put a planter in the field. You all put a Precision Planting planter in the field, and every row of that planter, what will it measure? Everything. That's exactly right. Everything row by row. That's what we expect. Fast forward. Your corn's growing. It gets to harvest time. You bring a combine in. Remember that 30-foot corn head I showed you on my combine? What are we measuring there? Are we measuring row-to-row yield? One number. If we took our planter to the field and it gave you one number, would you be happy? You would be pretty irate with us. So why is it okay to do it on the combine? AGCO on that Momentum planter has weight distribution. And whenever somebody says weight distribution, I laugh. And the guys at AGCO, they'll say, what, you don't believe in, the pinch rows are happening? I'm like, yes, I believe they're happening, but nobody knows that it exists because you can't measure it. And so what we did this year, we started to analyze our fields. And my goal was this: take an 80-acre cornfield, and with the equipment that I have, tell me how many rows of corn I have in the field that never see a tire track during the growing season. You guys ever thought about this? You ever thought about it? Yeah? What's your number? How many rows don't see a tire? You guys calculated it? You know what my number is? In an 80-acre field, only 9% of my corn rows don't see a tire. You do the math the other way around, and I think that's 91% of my corn rows have a tire on it. Now, it might be a wing tire of a planter, it might be the combine, it might be the planter tractor, it might be the sprayer, but 91% of my rows have a tire on it. And my question today is, where I'm running a tire track, does it cost me yield? Because we don't know that it exists today, because you can't measure it on the combine. And so our team goes out, and the only way we can measure it is to harvest it by hand. You guys are bored during the fall season. Come on over to PTI, we'll put you to work. We go to these rows with tire traffic patterns, and look what we found. On the rows that never see a tire, we're gaining 16.5 bushel of corn. Now, I was fearful this number was actually going to be higher. I said, well, what if the number's 30 bushel? I'm kind of glad it came in at 16, but listen, on your combines, when you're harvesting corn, if you saw a 16.5 bushel yield decrease because you ran a tire down that row, would you try to fix it? I think some of you would, but you have no idea that it's happening right now. And so this is what we're trying to go after and attack. We got to get our equipment. Mark, grab the mic, and I want you to explain, what is the slide? I have no idea what this is. Tell them.
I just need to go back a couple.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I built this, I took this, our current equipment setup. So our current equipment setup's on the screen there. We have a 40-foot Fendt Momentum planter, a 40-foot side dress bar, a 90-foot Heggie sprayer. We run a 20-foot corn head, and then a 20-foot strip till bar. So I took all of those pieces of equipment and I threw them on a graph on where those tires would land. So this is what our current setup looks like. It's frankly very bad, right? 9% of the field does not see a tire, and 91% does. So you can see the way we're set up right now is not ideal. We just have too many overlapping tire tracks, and it's just not going to work for what we're trying to do. So then I took this data and I said, all right, let's say a farmer went to everything on his operation is on 30 feet, and then he has either a 90 or 120-foot sprayer. And when we line all those things up, we drop down to 1/3 no tire, 2/3 a tire. So now we're getting better, right? We're only 33% of the field sees a tire track, 66% of the field sees a tire track, and 33% doesn't. And I said, okay, well, that's still not really good enough, so let's go to 40s. I put everything on 40 foot. So now we're 2/3 no tire, 1/3 tire. So this is better. Now, the only hard part about this is you got to manage a 16-row corn head, right? Because I'm on 40 foot here, so you got to figure out that's a whole nother management layer. But with this setup on a 40 foot, I can run that auger cart down my other pass to line those tires up with the Fendt ideal. We have the longest auger they make, gets you to that next 40-foot section. So that's why we really drop down there to the 2/3 no tire, 1/3 tire. So it's just something we're working on. We'll continue to see if we can fix it. But.
So the question is, does it make a difference on the tire? Yeah, I look at this data and I think every precision planting dealer ought to be selling tires. We need to change the tires and lugs we got going on in the field. I think we need to take a look at this. And so that's our next step, is going to different types of tires to figure out which ones are helping us the most. And then evaluating the economics of it, because you all know tires aren't cheap. Yeah, somebody said, Jason. Say that again. Tracks, I really like tracks. I think that's going to be helpful. Our combine's on tracks, or at least on the front. We did have planters that were tracks. We got rid of those, though, with the tandem axles that we've got on the Fendt with the air inflation. I think they're just as good as tracks. But on the tractor side, I think that's a winner. We need to go tracks on the tractor, or we need to go LSWs or something like that, and I think that'll get us by. Yeah. Mark mentioned something, though. If we go to 40 foot wide on everything, could y'all manage a 40-foot corn head? Wait a minute. How many people have a 40-foot corn head? Show of hands. I got one. One. Does that combine sit during the day, or can you get corn away from that thing? Yeah, that's the hard part. I ran a 40-foot corn head for the first time a year or two ago, and wow, that's a different way of farming. Right there. You got a lot of corn coming through that thing, and you got to get it away, otherwise that combine just sits. It is really interesting. The rows do match up, though. Yeah. So this is part of another 10-year study at the farm. We're going to analyze this and figure out, is tire traffic and the patterns in the field really costing me yield? Right now, I think the answer is yes. The other, somebody said short corn. This is short corn. My disclaimer on short corn is this is a Bayer short corn called Precion. And why are we going to plant short corn? Why is this thing in the marketplace? Why are we going to plant short corn? Less chance of corn falling over. I think that's the value proposition with this. You guys ever had down corn? It's not much fun. But this is short corn. And the Bayer version, here's how it works. It's good. You see these nodes of the corn plant, they stack them closer together. So it goes from the ear to the ground, and it shortens the node together, and that's how it shortens the plant. Now, what's the problem with that? The ear is going to get closer to the ground. Now we get to harvest time, and that ear wants to fall over and hang. If that tip of that ear is hitting the ground, do we have a problem? Yeah, we call that coon corn is what we call it, coon corn. Yeah. Now this is Bayer's version, Corteva, which if anybody works for Corteva, talk to me after this meeting because I want your short corn. Corteva has a version that I'm intrigued with because it takes the nodes at the ear to the tassel and shortens them that way. That doesn't affect the ear whatsoever. I think that might be a better approach to this whole short corn thing, but I haven't been able to test this corn. They keep telling me maybe next year. It's 25 a year, I hope so. You Corteva guys got to work with me. You guys, oh, I don't know if that's going to work. Here we go. Grab your phones. Tell me, how many of you guys have ever planted this short corn before? Have you planted short corn? Yes or no? Got a few yeses. 15, 16%. Most growers know. It is fairly new technology. We've tested this, getting the ears close to the ground. We have not had a problem at harvest time quite yet, but I do think, remember, I've got a drying system at the farm. I'm harvesting corn at 26%. I want to get in there before them ears drop to make sure I don't have any issues with it. Okay, it's one of the things we're talking about. There's a difference in the height. Look at this. Most corn, 9 to 12 feet tall. This is going to be 7 feet. Some growers have come to me and said, Jason, I want the short corn because that's a lot of residue I don't have to put back in the field, in the soil. What do you guys think about that? Yeah. Yeah, I'd kind of like to maybe have more residue sometimes. Yeah. One of the things we're addressing. Here's what kind of gets me worried about this. The guys at the Precion platform of corn will say in 30-inch row corn, short corn, you need to increase the seeding rate of that corn higher than what you've been used to with tall corn. And that worries me because you get high seeding rates, now all of a sudden you run into drought stress, we got a problem. This year, this is a 106 hybrid, came in best at 36. When we went higher at 38 and 40, we got crushed. There's the dollar amounts. Those are too high. That's in 30-inch rows. What about narrow row? Here's the whole deal with short corn. If it's going to be successful in the future, in my opinion, it's going to be in narrow rows. This is 15-inch row corn. 30-inch row with the short corn 108 number. The best seeding rate in 30-inch rows was 34,000. And here's my net number. But if I go to 15-inch rows, the best population was 42,000. And look at its net number, there's a $50 advantage by putting short corn in narrow rows versus wide. That's just one hybrid. We'll go to another one. Same thing happened with the other hybrid we tested. $46 advantage. And you'll see it's coming in at 42,000 versus the 30s being at 34. Economic optimum of each platform, it's a $50 winner in narrow rows. Dr. Fred Below at the University of Illinois has been to our farm the last 2 summers, and guys have questioned him about short corn. He's planted it for 7 years now, I guess, at U of I. And Fred smiles and he says, to me, the future is going to be 20-inch row corn, 20-inch row short corn. That's what guys are going to be growing. I think it's a bold statement. I really do. Because number 10 on our list is corn row width, and I will admit 30-inch rows are getting beat. They are getting beat. If you force me to plant narrow row corn in 2025, Jason, the only way you can grow corn is in narrow rows. I'm going to pick 15-inch rows, and I'm going to win. Our data would say that. There's the industry standard to 30s. Let's go to 20s. I can drive that with a Hagie 14.9 tire. I can do that. But what about this? Oh my gosh, how are you going to manage 15-inch row corn? Pretty narrow. I want to tell you a little story, and I know we got to eat here pretty quick. Gearinghoff. You guys ever heard of Gearinghoff? They're that corn head company. They're up in Minnesota. 12 years ago, I go up to Gearinghoff. I'm sitting in the boardroom with the Gearinghoff folks, and I said, guys, what is the future of narrow row corn? And they laughed at me. I said, what's so funny? And they said, well, we think the future is narrow rows for sure. And I said, what row with? And they said, 15-inch. And I said, well, why do you say the future is 15-inch row corn? And they said, well, Jason, look at all the 15-inch row soybean planters that are around the country. The 15-inch planters are already there on the farm. It's obvious that farmers are going to switch to narrows and go 15. That was 12 years ago. Has it happened? Has the adoption gone to narrow rows? No. And if you go to Gearinghoff like I've done, and I talk to them now and say, hey, I got 15-inch row corn at the farm, I need a Gearinghoff corn head to harvest it, they'll laugh at me again. I'm like, what's so funny now? And they say, if we make that 15-inch row corn head and give it to you to harvest your 15-inch row corn, when you're done with it, we can't sell it. We can't sell it because nobody's going to 15s. The adoption rate is just minuscule. Gearinghoff will not make a narrow row head because they know they ain't going to sell it. But my numbers say that 15-inch row corn's winning. I'm going to skip that one. This is 30-inch rows, and I'm concerned about this picture. What do you see in this picture in a drought scenario that worries you? Sunlight hitting the soil surface. When you let sunlight hit the soil surface, two things happen. What happens to temperature? It goes up, and what happens to moisture? It goes down, and if you're in a drought, those are two bad things. What if we could take that row in and change that canopy? Look at that 15-inch row. Look at all the shade. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of sun in here, but that's going to be a difference in temperature, and stress on that plant is going to be lower. Here's some data on 20-inch row corn. Everybody says, oh, if you go narrow row corn, you've got to plant it super, super thick. Is that true? I'd like to know who that person was that said it, because I don't think it's true. 36,000 gave us the highest yields in 20s. We look at the net profit of this thing after seed costs, 36,000 is where we needed to be in 20-inch rows. Not 40, 44. Look at the losses we have when we go that high. Now, I am harvesting my 15-inch row corn with a 30-inch row head. Anybody see a problem with this? Do you know that Precision Planting owns Headsight? We bought Headsight. You know what Headsight is? It's that technology for a corn head, you know, that'll keep that snout right down in the row and keep it straight. They tell me at Headsight that if you get off on your corn head and you start making the corn plant go like this, you might have harvest loss. Do you think that's true? What do you think I'm doing with a 30-inch head with these two 15-inch rows coming in? It is no problem to harvest this corn during the daytime. However, when you turn the lights on the combine, you got welder flash coming in. For 3 rounds, you're vomiting in the field. My point is, what if you have eardrop? Things like that. But right now, since the guys like Gearinghoff and all that won't make me a 15-inch row head, this is how I have to harvest it. But my numbers would say that that 15-inch row corn is winning. Yeah.
Have you experimented with a 15-inch planter planting 30-inch corn and putting a cover crop in the middle for the shade aspect?
There it is, cover crop. Somebody said it. Warm and fuzzy feelings flushing through your body, right? We're trying to do it through Solar Corridor. We are, and it's on here. But we're just looking at planting the corn and seeing the yield differences, and then once we evaluate that, we'll bring the cover crop in. So the answer is not yet, but we want to, yeah. Let me go to 20s. Now 20s, I can't use a 30-inch row head. I got to bring a 20-inch head in, okay? And that's been working. Here's my numbers, though. This is 19 through 24, 20-inch rows. And the only way I know how to test narrows is to take my 30-inch row corn that I'm doing today, plant it at 36,000, because that's what we do on the majority of our acres. So that's status quo. Then we bring 20s in at 40,000 on 20s over this time frame. It's $31 better net than 30s. Here's my challenge. You go to 15-inch rows, and it's almost double the profit of 20s. $57 per acre net profit at 40,000 is my winner. Almost $60 an acre. What's your number? If I could guarantee you an extra $60 net income on your farm, all you gotta do is switch to 15-inch row corn. How many do it? Exactly. Why? Why don't you want to switch? If I could make you another 60 bucks an acre, how come you wouldn't do it? Say, nope, no thanks. What'd you say? Retool everything. You got to buy different equipment on the farm. Well, you already got a 15-inch row soybean planter. I could plant 15-inch row corn. What else you got to change? You don't have to change your corn head. Maybe you do it with 30s. That's what we're doing. Nitrogen. Some folks say, there ain't no way in the world I'm planting 15-inch row corn. How am I going to side dress it? You know what my answer is? Same way we do 30-inch. We put nitrogen on 3 times. We're going to go weed and feed with our herbicide, okay, 32% down. Then I come in and plant. I've got Conceal on the planter. We're putting 20 to 30 gallon of 32 on with the planter. And then I come in with easy drops and I side dress. I do it on every acre we farm. Doesn't matter if it's 30-inch, 20-inch, or 15-inch. It works. I'm not leaving trams on 15-inch rows. I want to see what it's like. I want to plant the crop and run over it and kill it and understand what's happening, right? And then to see if I need to go to it. And if I do need trams, here's the fun part with precision planting. Make me a 20/20 monitor that's smart enough to figure out what rows to turn off to leave the trams. That'd be kind of neat, wouldn't it? Have it, put your equipment within, you're on it. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Here's some nitrogen data on narrow row corn. When we put nitrogen on narrow row corn, it wins. And so we can't put it all up front. A lot of growers say, okay, fine, I'll go to narrow rows, but I'm going to put it all up front, either in hydrous or a weed and feed. It doesn't work. We've got to continue feeding it. Yeah. All right. Any last questions? Thank you so much for having us to the great state of Ohio. Thank you very much.